12:38 p.m. on June 10th, 2020. On Monday, June 8th, there was a closing of a issuance for a bond for the City of Dallas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Refunding Bonds, Taxable Series 2020D. And on Tuesday, June 9th, there was a closing for a City of Dallas, Texas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2020C. In the bond prospectus, it begins the introduction to the bond, discussing infectious disease outbreak, COVID-19. It starts by giving a sort of history of the quote pandemic end quote that says that identifies January 31st 2020 as being connected to an announcement by the Secretary of the United States Health and Human Services Department. It mentions March 13th 2020, the governor of Texas declared a state of disaster for all counties in Texas in response to the pandemic. And it also says the pandemic has negatively affected travel, commerce, and financial markets globally and is widely expected to continue to negatively affect economic output worldwide and within the city. It then goes on to say in the plan of financing connected to this bond issue that the purpose is that proceeds from the sale of the Series 2020C bonds, together with other available systems funds, if necessary, will be used to refund certain outstanding bonds of the city and refund outstanding commercial paper notes. According to the prospectus, the amounts of the bonds are $296,855,000 for the Series 2020C and $364,240,000 for the Series 2020D. Now, I have been trying for several years to bring attention to my concerns around how municipal bond issues are oftentimes issued fraudulently and engage criminal activities in the processes leading up to their issuance. I'm not going to go into too many details, but I'm going to say that insofar as I understand these specific bonds, that would have been available and on the market, so to speak, and are set to settle. I believe the term they use is the settlement date is not yet and is in the first week of July. It is important to understand that I believe that the City of Dallas has intentionally engaged in fraudulent activity in order to mischaracterize the efforts that they would intend to justify financing connected to these municipal bonds. Number one, in May of 2018, the state of Texas and various other entities within the state of Texas, as well on the federal level, and in the months thereafter, were informed that I personally was trafficked to Dallas as part of a strategy that involved disabuse of my efforts to seek redress for crimes that had been committed against me and to which I had been witness, because there was a $302.4 million municipal bond for Alice and Fort Worth that was alleged to have been issued that day. I contacted various entities within the state of Texas, and just within the state of Texas had 2 report numbers issued in consideration of that bond. To this day, I have received absolutely no response to those bonds, and I have received no assistance with trying to report on other crimes that I have witnessed while I have been continuously trafficked here locally. Please note that among many other things, the state of Texas requires by law that every member of the police department and everybody in a law enforcement role receive training, at least 2 hours of training on counter trafficking training, how to address acts of trafficking, and that they are required to receive certification that they have attended this training. I have absolutely no evidence in more than 3 years of being in the state of Texas that the police force, that the Department of Public Safety, or that any city or county administrator, including those involved with healthcare or with provision of services to people involved in domestic violence shelters or homeless shelters, have even received that training, because there's no evidence they are even conscious of what trafficking is, much less that they are willing or capable of complying with the terms of certification for having been trained in how to address acts of trafficking. Secondly, there have been two major things that have been occurring in the last week and a half to the month that have been very concerning to me. At the beginning of March, right around the time that the announcement was coming in concerning the closing down of public facilities, ostensibly because of a state of emergency, the public library in downtown Dallas, which I understand also has bonds associated with it, had public portable toilets that were placed in the back and the front of the hotel on either side where the entrances to, not sorry, I just said hotel, to the library, where the entrances to and the exits from the library would be. These were disabled toilets that were the full size to be able to use, and they were less than 20 feet, less than actually 20 feet from the actual door, the actual opening and closing electronic door. There is nothing at all from a public health standpoint in any way, shape, or form that justifies having a portable toilet within 20 feet of the front door of a public library. Even there's nothing. In the entire time I've been here, there has never been a portable toilet on site at the public library, except during the week that the announcement was made about a state of emergency. The only justification or thing that I can understand is that in these situations of recurrent proxy scenarios that and derivative engagements that are actually in many ways not only public safety and public health concerns, but I believe highly illegal on other levels. The only thing that makes sense about this is that in 2018, around the time that municipal bond was issued through Bank of America, my understanding is it was through Bank of America, that they moved the Department of Vital Records from Dallas, from the City Hall, which is across the street, to the public library. So inside the library on the first floor is where all of the vital records would be accessible. It's where you go to apply for your birth certificate or your marriage certificate, or to get information on death certificates. And there's also a very substantial genealogical library in that specific library. And I honestly believe that they literally put portable toilets on both sides of the library as part of some sort of simulation that had nothing to do with public health. And that they left it there. Those public toilets were left there, not only for the last remaining days that the library was open before it closed down. I believe the library closed down 3 or 4 days after the announcement of the state of emergency, but for up to a week afterward. And then they were gone. So even from a standpoint of having to address the homeless problem, because a lot of homeless do congregate there, there's absolutely no sense to having portable toilets outside the entrances to the library. Secondly, I have been going and riding my bike around the city, and they have been engaged in substantial projects connected to some sort of repair of the sewer system in various areas in downtown or next to downtown Dallas. And it is alarming to me that, just for instance, and I'm going to have to mention it because it's this egregious, this past Saturday there was some sort of simulation involving an aircraft in the city. That is one thing. But the other thing about that is that they had announced that there was over 80 deaths that happened on Saturday alone. 80 people in the state of Texas died on Saturday alone. And yet during this time frame, they've got construction crews that are or maintenance crews out on the street digging up the subterranean tunnel networks, and the smell of raw sewage was like permeating the area for up to a block or 2 blocks in a particular area of downtown that was under the interstate. The interstate was above, and then they were doing something under the interstate. There's something specific about the jurisdiction of areas that are under the bridges and that is part of a political issue that was brought up in the municipal campaigns of 2017 and then immediately after. But that wasn't even in Dallas, that was in another jurisdiction. My concern is that these people that are engaging with raw sewage right now are wearing bandanas. They're not, if there is actually a public health outbreak that is an airborne disease that is killing people, why are they doing construction projects during a lockdown, exposing people to raw sewage wearing nothing more than a bandana? And by the way, this isn't even a bandana that would be consistently distributed by the employer. This is a personal handkerchief put over the face for more of, I believe, an aesthetic effect, a sort of sense of association symbolically, than anything having to do with worker safety. I believe this is absolutely sabotage, and this is an absolute bad faith effort to compensate for or to intentionally create defaults on past bond issues with the understanding that the manipulators in Texas will just leverage whatever is actually going on in these bad faith efforts to acquire these bonds. These bonds cannot be issued. They've obviously made a farce of the situation at this point of time, but to what end?